What's the creepiest thing you've seen at your relative's house? Not safe for work? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. My great-grandmother's house has a 1 meter or so tall jester harlequin doll that's just lying on a chair in one of the rooms. Gave me the creeps. It has a turnkey in the back that winds it up and plays a tune. My maternal grandparents got into a lot of arguments with neighbors. My grandfather did carpentry as a side hobby in retirement, so he built a large wooden fence all around the perimeter of their yard for privacy. One of the neighbors kept complaining even though my grandfather was well in the right. As a prank to annoy said neighbor, my grandfather used the bandsaw and cut out silhouettes of various shaped heads from plywood, painted them all jet black, put googly eyes on them, and attached them all over the fence at various heights, facing the neighbor's yard. I was unaware he had done this. I went over to visit and had to bring the garbage out at night. The light from the neighbor's yard made each of those silhouettes terrifying for a 6-year-old. We went to visit my great-grandmother. She was ancient and only spoke German and had a really stern face. I was exploring the house a little and found a closed door. When I asked my mother about it, she said, "That's your great-grandmother's room. He isn't allowed to come out when they have company." I never met the man or saw a single photo of him. No one ever talked about him. To me, that's creepy AF. I never met her in person, but I was 20 when my great-aunt passed away. I helped my mom and grandma box up and clean out her house. She was a collector of very specific things: whole preserved marsupial skeletons in glass cases, photographs from her days living in desert nudist communes, mounted specimens of insects that are now extinct, multiple sword canes. Creepy on their own, but together they painted the picture of an incredible life. Her long-dead and divorced husband's family, who lived out in the country, tried to legally contest ownership of her collection, but we fought them off. The majority of it was curated and distributed among museums and universities for preservation and education. I held on to one of her paintings and hang it proudly in my living room. According to Mom and Grandma, she was always distant and never tried to mix with family no matter how much they tried to bring her out of her shell. I think one of the biggest regrets of my life is that I never got the chance to meet her and sit down with her for a talk. I never knew she existed until she passed away. I visited my aunt and uncle when I was younger. They lived in a pretty small 3-bedroom in the desert, northern Arizona. When I arrive, my aunt says the guest bedroom is all set up for me. We spend the best few hours catching up and taking a tour around the property. When it's finally close to bedtime, I go into the room for the first time, and there are close to 50 dolls in there, on the floor, on shelves, along the ceiling, on desks, and they all looked right at me when I walked in. Saw Chucky way too young while unsupervised, so that was a hard pass. They were already gov to bed, so I just made an executive decision to sleep on the couch. But even from the other room, I couldn't sleep. I pretty much stared at the doorknob all night long, imagining all those dolls colluding and waiting for me to fall asleep to open the door and come get me. Not my relatives, but my wife's cousin. Not creepy though, just weird. Their porn collection sitting in the living room for everyone to see. Still there every time we go. Ask my wife about that and she goes, "Yeah, that's who they are, just try to ignore it." She said it's been there since she was a kid. It was just weird to me. They have kids around our age, so that porn has been out in open view for their children to see since they were children. The light switch plate in my grandma's bathroom is a naked dude in ab-open trench coat flashing you, and the light switch is his pecker. Only bathroom in the house, and it has never changed. I've had to flick his switch since I was a small child. My grandma, mentioned in a previous post, moved into a house that had locks on the outside of the doors. You may say, well, come on, that's not too bad. But these were on top of the door frame of the guest bedroom. The main bedroom's closet linked up to the guest bedroom, and there was another set of locks on this door in the closet, so it looked like a wall from the guest bedroom side. The kids' bedroom was in the basement. They had constructed bunks of some kind and kept kids in the basement room. The kids had painted pictures and written, scratched on the walls, things like, "The father works so hard to keep the wolves away, and the daughter brings one through the front door. Help us. God save us." My grandma called us asking if we would help her paint the new place, so I'll link some pics of the creepy-ass basement kids' room. When I was about 10, my cousin had a chihuahua that was her best friend. He got bit by a venomous snake and his bottom jaw rotted off. She was very upset and took him out back to shoot him. She was too sick over that to bury him, so she went inside crying, and her mom told her she would take care of him. Months later, my other cousin and I were cleaning the backyard and found a sealed bucket. We pried it open because we were going to use it, but when we got the lid off, we were hit with an overwhelming stench of death. In the bucket was the liquid remains of my poor cousin's dog and its tiny skeleton. We never told her we found it, and we dragged the whole mess to the trash pile that would later be hauled to the dump. I'll never forgive my aunt for having to live through that. When I was around 10 years old, I went to my great-grandmother's house. I went there a lot since she lived just across the street. The house had an attic, but I had never gone up there. One day, I decided to go and take a peek. The hatch to the attic was very hard to open, and clearly no one had been up there for a while. When I finally managed to get it open, I was shocked to see a white sheet with bloodstains all over it, and there was clearly something lying under it. It could have been a body, but it could have also just been something else. I was so scared that I just went home and I never told anyone. I also never built up the courage to ask my great-grandmother about it. Now she's dead, so I will never have a chance to ask. Still, I can't stop wondering if it was in fact a body, and if so, whose. My great-grandfather went mysteriously missing and was never found, so I speculated that it was him lying there, but I guess I'll never know since the house has been sold and doesn't belong to our family anymore. My aunt was a local artist, not rich, but had more money than anyone else in the family, lived in a big house, drove Cadillacs, etc. Her art was nice, but nothing special. One day, my little sister crawled into my aunt's art studio and wrecked a few paintings. My aunt went nuts and was screaming at my mom to keep a better eye on her kid. As this was going on, I snuck into the studio to monitor the damage. My sister had ripped open a canvas of one very ordinary painting and damaged plain-looking sculpture. Tiny bags full of white powder were inside both. All of a sudden, everything about my wealthy aunt and her shitty art made sense. My dad made me promise to never talk about it, but that was a long time ago. One time, my best friend, her mom, and I were helping our grandma, my best friend's grandma, basically mine too though, lol, unpack stuff in her new place, and I pull out this jar of like gray ashes or something, right? There's little chunks of white, hard things in there, who knows what, and her mom goes, "Oh, don't shake that, that's Uncle Ernie," or whatever freaking name she was. When I tell you I felt terrible. Here I am, shaking around a dead man, LMAO. Turns out it was sand from some beach, lol. My grandma on my dad's side collected jester and clown dolls, and my aunt, who lived with her, collected porcelain dolls. Sleeping over there was always the worst because there was no guest room, so I had to choose one of their rooms to sleep in. Either room I chose, I would always turn the dolls closest to me away so I could sleep, but someone was messing with me and would turn them back around by the time I woke up. Hopefully they were messing with me. On the second floor of my great-grandmother's house hung a kitschy painting of Jesus in the final moments of his agony. All the festivities were on the ground floor, so the second floor was always dark and empty. I only went up there to use the bathroom, and the icon scared me so badly that I would speed walk past it, averting my eyes. I remembered hearing about something called the Holy Ghost, and I was sure it was lurking up there, waiting to pop up from some corner and scare holy shit out of me. My relatives in Ohio had an old well on their property that isn't used for water anymore because they now have actual water lines, mains, or whatever you call it. So they enclosed it and attached it to their house. It's a room with a big open hole in the ground surrounded by a concrete slab. Whenever the bathrooms of the house are occupied and you need to go real bad, they use it as a toilet. They found out a few years ago that their outside hose was actually using water from the well, which they used for watering the grass, garden, pool, and normal hose usage thing. The worst part of it is that they always used to get sick when eating the stuff they grew in their garden and nobody knew why. Ugh. My 400-pound skits border uncle Danielle, a fat guy who had a long beard, never bathed, wore a dress, lipstick, and nail polish, thought he was James Bond. and was one of New York State's top 10 urban blight offenders 3 years in a row for his hoarding in Selden, New York. When I was 15, my parents dumped me off to stay with him or her. He had a trash can in the backyard full of child porn on beta tapes and more in the house. I'm not sure he even knew he had it, since his life revolved around using junk cars with stolen plates to race around like a maniac ahead of the trash men and collect good stuff that he hoarded on his half-acre lot. 40 to 60 tons would be cleaned out every 6 months by the town, and my grandmother was heavily fined since she owned the place. That summer, I was dumped off and told to clean up the mess to try to prevent another cleanup. I was 15, and my parents beat me when I failed to solve my uncle's problems and told me it was my fault my grandmother was going to be fined again. Guy also had a lot of illegal guns and homemade explosives. This was back in the late 90s. I have no idea what that nut job done over the last decade, since I cut ties with my insane family. Selden is weird, by the way. I live close by. I'll never forget this. When I was little, I would stay overnight at my grandparents' house all the time. I dreaded having to get up and use the bathroom in the middle of the night. You see, my grandmother was from Italy and kept many things around the house from the old country, pretty normal, except for the Venetian masks that were on the wall. In order to get past them, I had to walk right next to them down the hall to get to the bathroom. Couple that with old school candle holders that were on the wall that kept the hallway dimly lit in a yellowish tinge at 3 a.m. was straight up nightmare fuel. There are all types on the wall. It felt like they were all staring at you the entire time. My grandfather collected things from a famous clown way back in the day. I can't recall his name, but he was famous for being a frowning clown during the Depression, I believe. But that wasn't the creepy part. My grandmother had a thing for collecting clown things along with my grandfather's collection. I don't think she quite understood he didn't love clowns in general, just the one guy. But yeah, clowns were freaking everywhere. She had an enormous stained glass clown she hung in her front window for as long as I can remember. I'm not afraid of clowns, but I always felt oft-put by her collection. She and my grandfather passed last year, so I found a lot more clowns as I helped my mom clean out their house.